Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Boardroom, where we talk about recent events in cybersecurity and try to break it down for our non-IT professionals. My name is Vince Shoto, and I'm joined by my co-host T Soul. T, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you very much. So, what do we got going on? We spoke last week about a couple topics. I thought there were a lot of events taking place since last week, and curious to hear what we got.
Yeah, well, as you know, Vince, in the cyber domain, there's always stuff happening. You've been up to New York, you've been up to Albany County?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, they have had another breach. Well, it's a potential breach. So what happened is they actually don't know the exact timing or the method of this breach. This is actually this weekend. And so they're not sure, but they're initiating assistance from the New York State Department of Homeland Security, Emergency Services Cyber Incident Response Team. So the thing about this one, Vince, is it's not the first time.
No.
So I was doing some digging, and it turns out back on April 17th, they had a cyber attack that affected the legislative systems. So they couldn't put out new legislation. Back in 2021, they had a ransomware attack on the 911 dispatch center. I think that affected 3 different counties. Wild.
Wow.
Then back in 2019, there was a 6-figure ransomware payout by the Albany County Airport Authority. And then in 2019, the city had a ransomware attack. So those guys up there in Albany, I mean, they're really getting hit hard.
Why do you think that is? I mean, why are they being hit repeatedly?
Yeah. I'd venture to guess that number one, because they paid that ransom back in 2019, and they're a government entity, people, fraudsters, criminals, they expect that they're going to pay it.
They've got deeper pockets. They've got
deeper pockets, exactly.
The cash to be able to do it.
Yeah. But that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 times in the last 5 years. And that's what we know of so far.
Well, I think this is just further proof, though, that you need to have different types of defense strategies and layers, because multiple attacks, typically result in, multiple tactics being applied. So applying frameworks like MITRE from the MITRE attack framework from a defense strategy perspective to identify the attack, correlate it to known types of attacks so that they can come up with a game plan to address are absolutely key. I also think that because the county is central to a lot of activity, how many counties are there in the U.S.?
It's like 3,000. It's like 3,100 counties in the U.S.
And these counties, how many municipalities do they typically interact with?
That's a tough question, Vince. How many
I guess varying sizes, right? But let's say they've got 5, 10, 20, 30 municipalities they interact with. The county is at the center of a lot of activity. So they've got a lot of subs. They've got a lot of municipalities that are subs to them that interact with them. I'm sure they have state and local, federal type interactions as well. So a bunch of entities that connect to them, and those entities might be corporations, like they might be private citizens. And so we're talking thousands and thousands of people that can potentially connect with them. So third party is huge for these guys.
Yeah.
Huge.
You know what's interesting? That ransomware that was paid, right, by the airport authority. The source of that was a crypto virus from their MSP.
So it came in through effectively a third party. Although it's their MSP acting on their behalf, it's something that's connected into their system.
Yeah. But what surprised me was that, I mean, you wouldn't think that the vendor that you're using to make sure that your posture is secure would be the source of an exploitation.
I agree, but again, you need to make sure that all the more reason to make sure that you're not putting on blinders when you've got an MSP, that you've got to make sure that they've got a rigorous solution in place, because they're there to protect you.
Yep.
Wow.
And I think that speaks to, I think our one of the last couple of episodes we were talking about smaller community health centers who they really just kind of out of sight, out of mind. They outsource to a to a provider, and through no fault of their own, they expect that these folks are going to be able to provide what they need, and they're just kind of keeping it out of sight, out of mind, and it's just not enough nowadays.
If it can happen to a big county like Albany, it can happen to anybody. What's also interesting to me is, like I said, there's a bunch of entities that connect into them, but think of the sheer impact. So if put aside the fact that a bad actor thinks that they have access to cash, and they're a prime candidate to pay them when they hold them up for ransom. Let's put that aside for a sec. The county has a court system. They tie into a whole bunch of federal systems. They tie into a whole bunch of municipal systems. If a bad actor wants to compromise them to move laterally, through their system to access municipalities, do you think of the impact just from a municipal perspective? We do a lot of talk about smart cities, things like that. Municipalities are huge, right? They've got a lot of public facing interfaces, whether we're talking, Wi-Fi in a public library, or there's the mayor's office, there's Parks Recreation, police department, fire department. I mean, school systems, right? There is a huge potential for impact when someone can get in there and compromise those by accessing in one area, moving in, and then connecting into another subsidiary. I think it's crazy. And plus, the county typically has access to tax records for housing and all that. There's social insurance numbers, there's banking information, there's all kinds of stuff. A lot of risk that can be found there. What sticks out to me is the fact that they're at the core of a lot of integrations. They connect to thousands of people. I think it's really interesting that someone would target them because of the fact that it's sort of a way into many. If you think of the 3,000 counties that we've got in the US, and just having access to court records, to taxes, to municipalities, that's an astronomical number. Even if a fraction of those, say 10%, were hit simultaneously, that would be a huge impact to our economy, to society as a whole. So we should really look at that closely and try to at least recognize the fact that there's a lot of risk there, but also understand the fact that when the bad actors hit, they can hit often. They're going to hit using different methods, and the counties have a responsibility to be prepared for that and need to plan. So frameworks like MITRE, absolutely applicable to them. They need to be in the know at all times as to what's hitting them and what that could potentially be.
That's an interesting one, and it's pretty clear, right? Like it's a municipality, it's a county. They've got lots of important systems. Pretty clear why somebody would hit them. But you know what? Seattle Public Library, actually, they had a breach that was over the holiday weekend as well. What happened was the public library was actually this weekend. Systems were going down for maintenance, and then they discovered, hey, it looks like we've got an intrusion. And actually, what these threat actors did was lock down the systems. They took all the online stuff down. Can't rent it. It's not renting. You don't rent books.
Why attack a library? Who cares? It's a library. It's nothing vital. Obviously, it's important from access to information and things like that. But okay, so you can't access library infrastructure or websites while they're down. What's the big deal?
I mean, when you think about it, in a library, those systems are likely connected to the municipality or government at large. With all these systems being interconnected, was it a probing attack? Because you and I were talking about this, and it's like, what reason would they? What do you think the library is going to pay out? Like, what reason would they have to perform a ransomware attack on something so seemingly low value?
It's a less critical service, so maybe they thought it would be a quick payday, right? So that's one reason I think they could do it. The other one is, I think you're right. So it's a way to probe, to test, to see, because maybe they share infrastructure with other areas of the municipality. And so to see how they react to that attack tells them a lot about how they would react to another attack that is maybe more important or more impactful to society.
Yeah.
And additionally, it's a way to move in laterally through systems as well. So if I can get in there, I can get into potentially something else that could be more impactful, more harmful. The other thing I'm thinking about is that maybe if the ransomware is low enough, if that price is low enough, and you compare it to failing over to something else and building something net new, maybe it's just cheaper to pay the ransom and just be done with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. When do you pay the ransom and when don't you?
Right. It's a moral question, legal question. It's
I
not,
think it depends on what kind of
it's
system.
not simple. So there's a huge focus on continuity as well, right?
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about continuity, having continuity of services to be able to deliver your service. But in the case of an attack, ransom, someone holds you hostage where you can't deliver your services, regardless as to what it is, it's prudent to have a failover, an ability to do things manually, an ability to fail over to an alternate infrastructure, lock things down to still continue to conduct business. So the continuity of services is a huge thing within cyber that people need to consider. So it's not just about the vulnerabilities. Where are my vulnerabilities and what do I need to do? It's if I get hacked, if there's ransom, if someone is holding me hostage, what do I do if I don't want to have my only option being, I need to pay this ransom or just wait it out or sit or do whatever? Because a lot of times you'll even, what's the guarantee? You pay the ransom. What's the guarantee that they're going to release you? You send the money. There's no contract.
Criminals anyway.
Yeah, they're criminals. So they lock you down, and hopefully, when you pay, hopefully they bring you back up and they release you, and they don't come back for a second or third or fourth round. So that continuity really helps de-risk, all those risks when it comes to facing ransom. Yeah. And continuity doesn't mean you have to have absolutely everything. A mirror image of your environment somewhere else that you can fail over to, but core components that you need to conduct your business while you pivot to something else, should be in place at a minimum.
This is in your neck of the woods, Vince, down in San Antonio. CentroMed, they had a breach April 30th. They had a threat actor obtain files containing information about current and former patients. Now, what's wild about this, again, just like Change Health, they got access to diagnostics, dispositions, insurance codes, the whole nine. So this was discovered on April 30th. They didn't release the breach notification until I think it was May 17th, I believe. May 17th. Definitely.
Because they have like 30 days, right? Legally to release the information to the public?
Yeah, something like that. Something like that per HIPAA. But lots of information breached. And we talk about how
many people?
400,000. Yeah.
That's
and we talk about the risk to reputation. And it was interesting to read. I was reading an article about this, and there was a news station that interviewed a woman, and she was like, I'm never going to trust these people with my children's information again. It's really something that's got to be taken seriously.
Dude, I got two things with this. The first one is I am really worried that we become desensitized. We hear about breaches, healthcare. If you keep on hearing it all the time, it becomes the new normal. That is what the threat actors thrive on.
Yeah.
Right? As if they don't get called out, if people aren't worried, they keep on doing what they've got to do. That worries the heck out of them.
Yeah.
The fact that this can be perceived as normal, that's the biggest issue that I see right now with all this stuff that's happening. Eventually, we're just going to stop listening.
Yeah. And we're going to start paying out a ton in ransom.
Right. My other concern is, I get it. HIPAA or any regulatory agency or body needs to put in rules to have people adhere to. So they need to put the goalposts in place. The communication took less than a month, so they were well within the guidelines. And they did what? How did they communicate with people?
Well, so there's a few different ways, right? So first of all, they're going to send out a written notice.
Right.
If people have opted into electronic communication, they'll send out an email
Mhm.
And then finally they'll put a notice on the website. But
So that's my other concern is I get that the goalposts are there and they're operating within those guidelines. As a citizen of the world,
mm-hmm.
I am concerned with the time, the delay,
Yeah,
because if a company gets breached or they even think they're breached, I want to know right away, and I don't care
yeah,
how you notify me. Notify me by text, notify me by email, chat me up, call me, do what you want. You're just providing information so that I
mm-hmm.
can protect myself, so that
Yeah,
I can quickly go through and lock, let's say, my credit report, so
mm-hmm.
someone doesn't go through and take my information and start doing things maliciously. If I've got to wait 21 days for something to come in the
Late.
mail and I'm potentially not there to receive it, I don't know, on holiday, traveling, you name it, or I only go to my mailbox every couple of days,
Yeah,
that's added time, added risk.
mm-hmm.
So to me, that's upsetting.
Yeah,
These organizations, I get it, they're acting within the guidelines, but they have a moral obligations to do things faster. They got to
mm-hmm.
notify us faster. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay. Tell me you don't know what you don't know, and just give me an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to seek some type of shelter to to protect myself just in case.
Yeah, yeah.
My
You know what else
biggest
they're
beef.
Yeah. You know what else they're saying? They
What's that?
told patients, hey, you know, be on check your invoices, check your bills, because they could you imagine putting that responsibility on your patients? Hey,
So if you're asking me to check my bill, there's a couple things that come to mind. One is I have all of a sudden the added burden of trying to figure out. They're already complicated bills to begin with. You're looking
mm-hmm.
at your invoices when something happens. When you've got the unfortunate situation that comes up where you've got some form of illness, and you've got to decipher everything. Everything's you're looking for errors because different treatments that were approved, not approved, doctors that are putting in their insurance claims and all that. Now normally have to worry about that and try to fight that battle. Now you're going to ask me to look for additional errors. So that's huge to ask people to do that. If I am the insurance company or any type of organization, I'm suddenly at risk because if I call in and I have a concern and I question
Mm-hmm.
things, the organization that I'm dealing with, based on the known accuracy of the information they have at hand, will take a position and tell me yes or no. This is applicable, not applicable. But if they don't know themselves, and anything they tell you can be subject to scrutiny.
Yeah.
So all of their accounts receivable that they have, all the money that they're expecting to come in is suddenly at risk because someone can start pushing back and saying, I don't agree. You need to research more. It'll cost them money to do that, to validate. And hopefully, they can validate the fees that they're charging. So that introduces a whole new risk for them in that they put all of their accounts receivables at risk.
I think about the increase in frequency of attacks and all that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
how it's starting to become normalized. And I think to myself, like, what's it going to take to get organizations, to get healthcare organizations and others to notice, to take action? I think it's going to be backlash. Nothing is really going to really change until people start losing customers.
It all comes down to money.
Exactly.
Money drives it all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
As soon as it starts affecting their pocket, but at scale across
Exactly.
multiple organizations, will they get together and come up with an approach can be truly meaningful? Until that, it's all individuals perhaps trying to be meaningful for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
but the collective, whether we're talking the patients or clients and the organizations and the government, right? The collective needs to come together and truly align, truly establish best practices, truly ensure that you're communicating accurately, quickly, that you have the proper the posture in place, your hygiene is at par with a higher standard, not with at par with, what you think the minimum is to be able to defend.
Yeah.
And have systems in place that don't allow organizations to just think about it or just, stay on the fence.
Exactly.
You've got to have something that is impactful. They've all got to get together. Just going back to the Albany situation, I also think, since I'm on my soapbox, I also think that they have a moral obligation to society to ensure that they have
citizens,
the proper posture in place. Well, the citizens and the organizations that they interact with.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, though, those third parties, anybody that interacts also has an obligation. As a citizen, you have an obligation to make sure that you're doing the minimum to secure your information, not to expose you personally, mm-hmm. but allow mm-hmm. someone to get into a system based on your information. So you have a moral obligation to society as well.
Yeah.
The organizations, the municipalities, anybody that's a third party, they also have a moral obligation to society.
Yeah.
The collective have a moral obligation. There's no finger pointing and saying, oh, it's them, it's the county, it's the state, it's the municipality, it's a vendor, it's my sub, it's mm-hmm. an MSP. Oh, it's and they're the other ones are pointing fingers at people. The citizen is divulging information. We all have a moral obligation. It doesn't rest with the county alone.
Agreed.
Well, that's interesting, man. Looks like we are up for time. With that, man, I will wish you a great week. I'd like to thank our viewers, listeners, for listening and following us on Spotify, as well as on Insta and Facebook and Twitter. And follow us on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, as always, or any comments, we'd love to hear them. We'd love to talk about the things that are important to our listeners. So any comment, any email you send, I'll personally reply to, as well as T. Would also like to thank our sponsors, Cloud Warriors. They can be reached via their website at cloudwarriors.ai. So with that, I'll bid you a fantastic week, and we'll talk.
Thanks. Take care.
All right, man.